All right, Jim, what do you think? Should we kick off?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, all right. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Um, I'm Brian Fox. I'm with 18F and one of the co-leads of the DevOps community of practice. And James Gohagen, or Jim, and I are co-leading today's session. So we're coming together, bringing two communities of practice together. Jim is co-lead of the RPA community of practice. And so we're really just glad to bring you all together and hear a story from the United States Department of Agriculture and what they're doing as far as RPA and how they're getting there. Let me just kind of go through my notes here. So not only am I leading the DevOps COP and Jim is leading RPA, but Nick is also supporting our community of practice program office, and he'll be moderating the event chat. So that's after the presentation. We're going to be hearing an overview of USDA's RPA program operations and the RPA Service Management Organization, or SMO, and their development process. This is going to be the first of 3 joint events that we're doing between the RPA and DevOps community of practices, or COPs. While today we're going to be hearing from USDA, if you join us on the 30th of July, you'll have an opportunity to hear what NASA is up to. And then on the 13th of August, we're going to hear from a group within GSA. Our overall goal is to share how these organizations are implementing this RPA innovation. And again, thank you all for being here today and bringing the energy to it. Just as a reminder, and Jim's going to hit on this too, but we're recording this event. I'm saying that first and foremost as a warning, but also that this gives you the opportunity to share this information later on with your colleagues. We'll share this information out via Slack channels and listserv. And just a heads up, if there's any issues with the Zoom, we'll go ahead and record and share it with you all later. I know there's been talk or stories of Zoom bombing, or if there's any sort of threshold issues we run into, not to worry, we'll go ahead and record it and share it with you all later. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jim, who will run through our housekeeping and introduce today's speakers. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Brian, and welcome everyone. It's so nice to have you here. We're really excited to have our USDA colleagues share with us today. Nathan, if you'll go to the next slide, please, we can just show the logistics. If you've never been to an RPA webinar, the way we run these is that, our participants will be muted so that our speakers and presenters can present without interruption. That said, as Brian mentioned, Nick will be monitoring the chat for your questions, so feel free to submit those at any time, and there will be opportunities for Nick to jump in and voice your questions and your interests. We also, one last final reminder that today's session will be recorded. So with that, I would like to introduce our speakers. We have Greg Jorgensen, who is a senior level information technology professional, and he serves as a solutions architect for the USDA Digital Infrastructure Service Center, DISC. In that capacity, he has advised agencies in architecting the DISC cloud-based services offering that best fit their technical requirements. Mr. Jorgensen has supported robotics process automation efforts at USDA for several years and currently assists in supporting the UiPath RPA infrastructure for the Service Management Office. Welcome, Greg. We also have Latrice Goldsby. Ms. Goldsby is the USDA RPA Program project manager. She has worked in the IT field for 15 years and 5 years at USDA. She joined the RPA program in October of 2019, and she provides oversight of the Service Management Office and project management to the RPA program. Welcome, Latrice. Sonia Alvelo has been in the field of information technology since 2000, beginning with the Department of Defense for the healthcare system as a government contractor. She has over 10 years supporting the Department of the Army Recruiting Command as a civilian, and currently she is the RPA Solutions / project manager at USDA. Tim Steen is a senior level information technology professional serving as the IT specialist for the USDA Digital Infrastructure Service Center, DISC. In this capacity, he supports a number of diverse technologies and ZOS mainframe and mid-range technologies, hosting a number of different application server environments. Mr. Steen has over 30 years experience in all manner of systems, mainframe, AS400, Linux, and most recently Windows, as both an application programmer and systems administrator. He is the technology lead supporting the UiPath RPA infrastructure. And last but not least, we have Mr. Brian Fields. Mr. Brian Fields has been in the IT field for 30 years, with the first 15 years in private industry. The past 15 years he has worked for and now manages the application and database integration teams for the USDA Data Center Hosting Services Division, DISC. Brian is the service owner and operations manager for the Robotics Process Automation Division at USDA. So thank you all so much for being here today. We know that USDA has a very successful RPA program built on impressive infrastructure, and we're really excited to learn more about your development process as well. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sonia to begin the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. I am honored to speak here representing USDA today. We are representing dev operations, and again, GSA is a unique opportunity to share what we're doing at Department of Agriculture. I'm excited to say that we have a dynamic robotic process automation program of the 21st century, providing guidance and governance policy oversight throughout its enterprise. And this enterprise is shared across all the missionaries and agencies for their bot development. This bot development process is streamlined by the experienced professional of the Service Management Office, better known as the SMO. All the members bring a unique specialized experience to the table in a collaborative effort for bot success. This RPA enterprise service is created by our very own Office of the Chief Information Office to leverage RPA. You know, in conjunction with the SMO, the Digital Infrastructure Service, or DISC, comprises a scalable cloud hosting environment allowing multiple tenancy for RPA customers. Therefore, each missionary has their own unique environment set apart from one another, which offer an option for disaster recovery. Oh, next slide, please. Sorry, I'm sorry. The enterprise, all of which, this enterprise was aligned with the top priority of the USDA Secretary to deliver an effective, efficient, customer-focused emerging technology forward in consolidation efforts. Those efforts are echoed with the OCIO strategic goal to optimize value of the IT services. We have seen the impact of the value of optimizing RPA solutions. I would like to share a few of those success stories, if you will. One of our missionaries have a bot nicknamed Penny, which will be used more than 1,000 field employees to pre-fill about 30,000 promissory notes annually. This returned to the staff about 5,000 hours to devote to more valuable added activities throughout their work. In another instance, we have another office that has an enterprise bot that has calculated over 650 hours in savings on one of their funds distribution transaction alone, and upward about 5,000 documents. You know, say the least, it is fire season for one of our field agencies, and they are doing an automation for task orders in their integrated acquisition system bot, which saves over 35,000 labor hours annually. That costs about $929K in cost savings. This is only share a few of the awesome bot automation success stories happening at the USDA. You know, RPA, the Service Management Office, manages all the activities within its network. This most supports both a centralized and a federated model. As you can see, centralized model affords agencies' ability to engage the SMO development team to build and to automate their business process. The process utilizes a contract vendor on a firm fixed price vendor vehicle, and the team consists of certified developers and O&M for the POP. Agencies opting to use the federated model to have a little bit more flexibility. They can engage their own development team. Also, they can contract a third-party vendor support of their choosing. Both models engage the SMO for governance, and they maximize code standardization and the reuse and saving, code reuse and savings as often as possible. So with that being said, I would like to continue this presentation by handing off to Latrice Goldsby. She's our lead RPA project manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Next, I want to go into our RPA SMO development process. This is what we call our pipeline of how we have customers request their process to be automated. We have it in 3 phases. Next slide. Thank you. So customers come in through our process via their business relationship manager. They request a process via intake form, part A. That intake form allows the customer to document the process that they would like to automate, also include the ROI for us to assess before we begin the in-depth dive into the process that they would like to automate. Once we receive that intake form from the requester, we set up a meeting with them to go over Part B. And Part B allows us to go in depth with the requester about the process of how many steps, if there are going to be any service accounts that need to be requested, or any hurdles that we may see with the process being automated. Once that piece is completed, our support team for the SMO, they gather the information and they provide us with the process description, the ROI for it, and the complexity of the process, where we have a governance board that votes on whether or not the process moves forward to be automated. We do a vote to make sure that the process that is being automated is best in the department's value to do so, to automate it. Once the process has been approved, the requester can move forward with development. And to date, we've only had to deny one request because the requester was requesting a process to be automated where a system was not yet built yet. So far, everything has gone through. Next slide, please. So once the requester has received approval to move forward, they have the option, as Sonia mentioned earlier, to either use our small development team to automate their process or use their own vendor or IT staff that has the ability to automate the process for them. We require certain documents moving forward from this point where we have checkpoints with them. The process definition form is a document that documents the process that's going to be automated from start to finish. The requester has to review the PDD, as we like to call it, and sign off on it before development can begin. Once the process owner has signed off on their PDD, the development begins of the bot. We use UiPath as our automated software. So they'll work with their vendor or with our SMO team to automate that through development. Once that's complete, customers will publish their code into development and begin review and testing. Once their reviewing and testing is complete, we actually at the SMO review their code to make sure that it meets all security standards. So there's no hard-coded passwords within the code and other items that we look at as well. Once that's been approved, the customer is then allowed to move to production. Next slide, please. So once the customer is allowed to move to production, they also begin doing testing and review there as well. Once complete, we're actually setting up an O&M process where our SMO is available to support them, or they can choose to have their own vendor in-house support for O&M moving forward. I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions within the chat.
Hi, Latrice. We have a ton of questions coming in. As you can see, they're coming in fast and furious. So this does seem like a natural breaking point. There's been some questions about your vendor selection and different things like that. Mm-hmm. So could you just go into a little bit of detail to talk about what your criteria was for selecting a vendor, not necessarily why you chose that vendor, but just some of the criteria for why they were selected?
So the program was initially with our Office of Chief and Financial Officer who started the program. It transitioned over to OCIO in December 2019. So a lot of the part of the selection around that was the vendor's capability of being a certified vendor and their reputation and their ability to be able to support the SMO activities. So with our contract, and I won't go too much in detail with this, we have a part of it where it offers development, which is separate, that agencies can take advantage of. So we had to ensure that that vendor was able to provide that support to the contract, as well as provide SMO support, which is also what we call helping us assist with the policy and governance of the RPA program. So being able to be those SMEs that can assist us in putting out policies and governance towards RPA development, and also when it comes to doing the intake process and helping us assign the complexity of the process as well.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So one of the questions that always comes up in these chats for us, and I think they're awesome, are security questions, especially with the ability for someone to use some of this technology is pretty simple, and a lot of people can teach themselves how to use the different software platforms. So one of the questions came in that it's asking, how do you guys ensure that the federated RPA creators include security controls that you guys have put in place before deploying it in automation?
So that happens during the code review. When it goes into, we have to allow them to deploy it first into the development environment. We found if we did the code review beforehand, because the development is done on the developer's laptop, they're unable to take out those hard-coded username and passwords. But once they go onto the server, they're able to go in and add that the security pieces that we require when it comes around service accounts within that code. And I don't know if Tim or Greg has any additional that they'd like to add to that piece, but that's the part that I know of.
So I could just add that the architecture of the UiPath solution that we're using allows for multi-tenancy, so that each customer agency that comes in is isolated within their own pool and credentials within the orchestrator. So they don't have access to other teams that are doing different robots. So there is that isolation there as well.
Awesome. So do you guys have a specific security protocol for each bot that has to go live? Does it have to include a PDD or custodian rules of behavior if someone's going to run it? What are some of those requirements you guys have before something can go live?
So they have to have a PDD, and some agencies also require a security impact form. We currently do not require that. And then also when it comes to security, our security team also requires an ISA, an interagency connection agreement, security agreement with the agencies that are putting bots within our environment as well. And those PDDs are attached to those ISAs, as well as within the ISA, it tells, within the PDD, it tells us what systems those bots are touching. Mm-hmm. So our security team can verify that.
Yeah, and so you obviously talked a little bit about that code review. So when you're doing that code review, is it an automated process that goes and does that, or is it someone manually reviewing each bot?
It's one of our small manual developers that are reviewing each bot code.
Awesome, awesome. So there's still a ton of questions coming in, but I don't want to break up this this presentation too much. So some of these that are coming in, we'll save them for the end, but let you guys keep continuing, and it seems like we're super engaged. So thank you guys.
All right, thank you. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Brian Fields.
Thank you.
To talk about our hosting environment.
Yep. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm having laptop problems.
Yeah,
loud and clear.
All right, great, thanks. I had my phone here as a secondary in case. I think the USDA is downloading updates to my laptop. We're trying to download, and I've been trying to hold them off. So we'll see what happens here. So my name is Brian Fields. As stated earlier, I manage the application and database integration teams at the data center here. Actually, the only data center at USDA now. We've been doing this for a long time. We inherited this project back, as Latrice stated, back in December from one of our sister agencies or mission areas within the USDA, and that was Office of Chief Financial Officer. We've taken it, we've modified it for an enterprise service for the USDA, and one of the responsibilities that my team has, and we're an operations team, and you've got my operations guys on the phone, you got Greg and you got Tim. Our responsibility is to make sure that the hosting environment is stable, reliable, available, and secure. And so we looked at what our CFO had deployed. It was actually deployed. I saw a question about where is this deployed. If you don't know, USDA has their own on-premise cloud environment. And we also have, of course, the typical AWS, Azure, functionalities, but okay, I got to note that my audio is fading away. Let me switch over to my phone. I think the USDA.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we're having some issues with hearing the audio. Is that a comment? It sounds like from the chat. Others, Brian, you're breaking up a bit. I'm not sure if there's any thing we can do to try to resolve that.
He's going to switch over to his phone quickly.
Okay, I'll need to unmute him there then.
All right, can you guys hear me on my phone?
You're still choppy.
So while we're waiting for him to get connected, Latrice, maybe we can answer a couple more of these questions that are popping in the chat while he's getting connected. So someone asked if you guys have a bot/RPA specific ISA template available that you guys are using now.
We are using a template for our RPA program for the ISA. I will talk with our security team if you like and see if we can share that template.
Yeah, please do. So our community is actually working to put up an OMB Max page right now where we're sharing common templates, where GSA is posting some of their templates for some of these things. So that's definitely something, if it gets approved, we would like to share with the community as well.
Yeah, so we have several templates that we are currently using that we do provide to our customers and requesters. We have the PDD template. We have the code standard template that we share with them so they know what we're looking for when it comes to code review. We have a test plan template, also a user acceptance testing template, and a development process template. And we also have a checklist. It's a live document. We're still getting it updated, but we can also share that documentation as well.
Yeah, awesome. So another question that we're getting is, how do you guys support internal people who come to you and say, maybe I want to learn how to be an RPA developer? How are you guys working to support people who might have the skills to do this and want to get more involved in a program?
So currently, we actually had 2 groups go through what we call cohort reskilling, where we trained approximately, I would say about 55 people in RPA development. Right now, we do not have people coming in that want to develop, but we do allow them to develop for within their mission areas that they support. So if they come with an idea of a process that they like to automate, and their management team or mission area says, yes, we would like for you to work on that, they're more than happy to go through and automate that process for their mission area.
And are there other skill sets that maybe you guys look to bring into your program? Because I see one of the questions that I'm getting here is one of the common criticisms about RPA is automating a bad or broken process.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other skill sets that maybe you bring in to help mitigate some of those risks up front that you look to involve your program with?
So with our support team, we have not only developers on our team, but we have business analysts available. And then we're also going to be adding a system engineer to our team next year that will be looking at all the processes that come through to review and see if it is a good or bad process to automate. Yeah,
no, that's definitely important. Yeah, and another one of the community's favorite questions is always about credentialing and authentication, because as you guys, I'm sure, are very, very aware, most of these RPA softwares don't support 2-factor authentication. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys have solved that sort of issue for unattended bots?
So Tim or Greg?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So for unattended bots, and the goal is always to use an unattended bot when possible, as opposed to attended, because you're achieving a higher level of automation there without having to take somebody's work cycles. But we make use of service accounts, and really the issue there is going to be whether or not, if the system that they're interfacing with requires MFA, then you're not going to be able to use an unattended bot with a service account. You're going to have a human put in those MFA credentials. So, but that's simplistically what we use is service accounts. And we do make sure that there's a different service account used across each tier and for each unique to each bot as well. So even if we have an agency that's doing multiple bots, they're suggested and required to get a bot that's specific to each, or I'm sorry, a service account that's specific to each bot that they're going to use.
Awesome.
Hey, just to jump in real quick. So Brian Fields is he is dialed back in just via phone line. And so if somebody can unmute him, the last 4 of his number is 8159. I don't know if you can see him there.
believe we just did. Ryan, want to try?
Okay. Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Yep,
Thank you.
much better.
All right. Is that better? Sorry about that, everybody.
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah, the USDA beat me down. The desktop support team beat me down, so they won. I'll continue on. I think basically I was describing kind of the history of how we brought this over from our sister organization within the USDA, OCFO, Chief Financial Officer, and was told that, you know, integrate this into the data center onto our USDA private cloud. We have a USDA private cloud at the data center here at USDA, and quite honestly, about, I would estimate 80 to 90% of all USDA business applications are running in the private cloud here at the data center in Kansas City. And so if you ever have any questions on that, that's a different topic, but it's considered a government private cloud. So with that said, my team, Tim and Greg, were told to build an enterprise supported environment. And when we say that from a hosting standpoint, we want it highly available. We want it multi-tenant, so multiple customers. And I think, Greg, you mentioned that earlier. We want it DR capable, so from out of the box. And then we want it flexible for our customers. And so we actually have accomplished all of that. The multi-tenancy, as Greg mentioned, you'll notice at the bottom of that slide there, that is how we're doing it. UiPath allows us to set up server unattended bot servers, and we're prepared to build out one to N of these in support of any customer that comes in to the, actually any USDA customer, I should say, that comes in. The centralized hosting infrastructure there, that's in the top right hand, that big box there, that's all the stuff that makes up the UiPath hosting environment. That's all highly available. We can manage and update, one server, bring things up, down. We can do all that stuff that you would expect from a highly available environment. And it's also DR capable. And the fact that here at the USDA on our on-prem cloud environment, we actually have the capability of failing over the entire thing to our St. Louis data center. We have a backup data center in St. Louis at a moment's notice. We test that twice a year. And in fact, this environment has already been tested, that the centralized hosting pieces there in that top right box will recover. That's our responsibility. Customers can actually sign up for that same capability on those unattended bot servers at the bottom. So OCFO might determine that it's important. And we got to remember what we're automating here. We're automating a human process. And so when you do your business impact assessment, you got to determine whether that human process is important to be brought up, within like a day, like a RTO within a day. So that capability has been given to our customers. They can take advantage of it, but we ensure the central infrastructure is DR'd and is available within a day in St. Louis. With that, I don't know what else to tell you about this. We've onboarded a few customers, as you can see, and there's actually more coming in as we go. I know there were questions about hosting, and so I guess I can open it up at this point for hosting questions. Okay.
Yeah, I think we can keep going through the presentation for now. If any more pop up, I think we answered quite a few questions while you were off the line there, but we can definitely
Okay.
do that.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Latrice. I think you have some statistics on what we've accomplished in just the past few months.
Yep. Next slide, please. All right, so since we've gotten the program, there was 13 bots currently in production from OCFO. Since then, we've added an additional 10 bots to where now we have 23 bots in production. We are currently saving almost $1.5 million in labor hours saved. Now, I would caveat that, of course, it's not money that's being saved, it's the time and money that's being saved that allows people to do other more intelligent work, more customer engagements, That's where the time is being spent. So no one has, as we like to say, no one has lost their jobs because of RPA development. Because some people here, when they hear RPA, they think that, oh, that means someone's going to be taking, a bot's going to be taking over my job. I'm not going to have a job anymore. And that's not the case. And then we have over almost 50,000 hours saved and hours. And then it's equivalent to 24 employees here at the USDA. We are on track for this year to hopefully have 37 bots in production with a goal of possibly, the goal of having 200 bots by the end of next fiscal year within production. So this is just the dashboard that we present to our department. Are there any questions in regards to how we track? We have a back end library where we keep the data that allows us to track this information, and we gather all of the ROI upfront from the requester, so we're able to track it more easily.
So Latrice, that labor saved, it's a capacity created. Obviously, like we're talking about, we're not no one's getting their jobs taken. So that 1.47 million is an added capacity, correct?
Correct.
Okay, awesome.
And in Forest Service case, when they developed their 4 bots, they actually did not have anyone doing the work at the time. And that saved them close to, I think it was like $929,000 by not having to hire people to do that work during fire season.
Yeah, awesome. So I believe this was your last slide, correct?
It is.
Okay, so we can open this back up for a few more questions. So one of the questions we're getting is about O&M and change requests. Do you guys have an established process for once a bot is put into production and it needs updates, or it needs editing to the code, or a process changes and it needs updates? What does your process look like for something like that?
Hi, this is Brian Fields. I can answer that. One of the goals of the environment was flexibility. So there's 2 different sides of that. One is all that central hosting infrastructure that the USDA operations team manages. We follow a very strict change control process for patching, for vulnerability management, for all that stuff as you would expect. We issue customer letters if we're going to take the system down for any reason, for or even a possibility of taking the system down. That is, of course, not our goal. On the other side of that, though, the flexibility comes in. Each of those customers have their own tenant. Customers, and I say customers, they're USDA agencies. So we mentioned Forest Service, we have FPAC, we have, FSA, we have all these folks. They're responsible for following their internal change management process when it comes to bots. So they, and it's no different than any other development effort within a mission area or with an agency. They should already have their change processes in place, and this allows them to follow that without affecting other customers in the environment. That's the advantage of the multi-tenancy. And so we put that back on them. We offer operations and we offer O&M services through our contract with our SMO vendor, what we call our SMO vendor. And that's purely we monitor their bots to make sure they're running when they're supposed to. If there's an error, we do initial troubleshooting, and then we reach back out to that customer to say, hey, here's what's going on. And then, as you all know, if anybody's dealt with RPA, even something simple, there's a code update to a remote system, to a financial system that you're communicating. Even a screen update messes up a bot. So that, once that's determined through our operations and maintenance contract, that goes back to that customer, who then is responsible for either bringing in their own contractor or actually, they are responsible for making those changes and rolling it through the environment as you would expect development, cert, production. So I hope that answered the question.
No, that's great. That's great. Thanks. So Greg, a little bit, you're touching on some of those credentialing questions earlier. Can you establish how the identity of the service accounts are credentialed or named? Do you have any standard naming conventions for some of those processes that you guys have automated?
Yeah, so we don't actually manage the service accounts directly within the SMO, but there are naming conventions that I believe the agencies that provide those accounts use or recommend. But so long as they're unique, it's not really an issue for us. And these are backed by Active Directory in the case of the service accounts. And then we also have a separate system that's used for web-based authentication called eAuth, which also gets involved in many of these because it's going to depend on what system the bot is actually interfacing with. But if it's touching a system that's web-based, then typically it's going to need an eAuth credential as well. So that's also normally part of the process.
Awesome.
But there's a robust management system to deal with those service accounts. And there's a set of attributes that have now been captured in a document that Latrice and others with the SMO maintain that guides them in terms of the attributes that need to be set for those service accounts that are, again, a little bit unusual because of the way the technology works in terms of using things like a loopback RDP session, which is not something you would typically see needed by, normal technology that we use and usually not required by service accounts, but those are now pretty well documented.
Awesome. So how do you guys kind of go about, and this is kind of, it's similar to the question we were talking about earlier. How do you guys track the amount of O&M required per bot deployed? Is that just simply through your SMO contract, the hours you would put on for them to fix it? Or how do you guys track the amount of time spent fixing some of these processes, down the line?
And this is Brian Fields, and that's a great question. We are just really starting to roll out operations and maintenance contract. That's something fairly new to the contract. As you can look, we really have just been at this for a few months.
Yeah.
Everything that's been rolled out in production so far, those 23 bots that Latrice put on the screen there, all have a warranty or a follow-up period with their contractor, whether it was the federated or the centralized environment. And so they are all currently under their original development contract warranty period. And so what we're looking at for FY21, though, really that's kind of when these things kind of take place from an operations and maintenance is our contract with our vendor is specific. It's based on the number of bots in production, or robot packages is what we call them. And we limit what they're allowed to do from an O&M perspective. And then, as I mentioned earlier, monitor jobs, check logs, make sure the tenants are running. And then if there's any problems, they get back with the customer. Then anything that's I would consider tier 3 or even above would go back to the customer for them to figure out how they're going to deal with it. We charge a set dollar amount per robot package per month to support that contract. As I don't know if you all know this, though, DISC, the Digital Infrastructure Services Center within USDA, is a oh gosh, I just lost the term. We're a fee-for-service organization.
Correct.
What's that?
Yes,
yeah,
we're a fee-for-service.
I can't think that. Yeah, there's a specific term with that, right? Versus a group that gets money every year.
Appropriated.
Right, appropriate. We're not appropriated. We're the other one.
Correct.
So anyway, whatever that is. So we have to cover our costs for whatever services we sell. And so we know that the O&M vendor can handle up to X number of robot packages in this limited fashion. And that's basically how we've written the contract. And so if that goes over a certain number or percentage over that number, we modify the contract and add additional dollars to the contract so they can support it. So it's really like a firm fixed price contract.
Awesome. So switching gears a little bit again. So I know you guys talked about automating the human processes. Have you guys started to get to a point where you're utilizing APIs or utilizing, maybe getting access to the back end of a system so that it becomes a little bit more stable when rolling out some of these processes?
I think that's probably a question best answered by the development teams, but what we've seen sort of anecdotally is that they're going to work towards, of course, using an API if it's available, but in other cases they have to revert to using, screen scraping and filling, which of course is a lot more fragile.
Yeah. No, understood. Let's see what other questions we have coming in. So I've seen this small, medium, large question a couple times. How are you guys establishing standards and criteria for what you'd categorize as a small, medium, or large project?
Well,
So-
Latrice, I mean, I don't know if you can you answer that? Probably from our SMO perspective.
Yeah, I can assist with answering that question. So we determine if it's a small, medium, or large project based off of how many applications and how many steps the process will touch. And then also based on how long it will take to develop. So we have it based off of where a small project for us can take anywhere between less than 4 weeks, where a medium is 4 to 6 weeks, and a large project is 6 to 12 weeks. We also do add into that if it is available, code reuse. So if code reuse is available, that also changes the complexity too, as well, of the bot that's going to be developed.
Awesome. I appreciate that insight. So another one of these questions, I think Greg might have just answered it in the chat, but definitely good to hear out loud. The question initially was, what environments do you support for DevOps? Dev, test, stage, prod? And I think you answered in there, but if you could expand on it a little bit, that'd be great.
Sure. So, and it's indicated a bit in the diagram that Brian was speaking to earlier in terms of the environment that's set up. But by default, we support a dev, a pre-prod, and a production environment. But because customers have the ability, the bot servers particularly are set up within the customer's enclave, within their own VLANs, using their project codes, et cetera. They can establish more environments. So we have sort of culturally some customers that set up additional environments like a UAT and a QAT that we wouldn't be surprised to see here as well.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Appreciate that. So this was kind of a fun question. And someone asked, have you had any runaway bots or other horror stories you can share? I know there's a few at GSA that we could certainly share, but just interested to get you guys' approach. I know you guys are a few months into this, but are there any lessons learned that you guys could share with the community?
So somebody
Tim
in the
or
chat,
Greg, you probably would be the best to answer that. And let's think about this from a, when you say runaway, our infrastructure should minimize the impact of that on other tenants. So that was the goal. So Greg, go ahead. I know you were going to say something there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Tim has seen any of that because we've sort of tended to split out and support different customers, but I've not seen anything, like a looping process that became unresponsive. I think part of the idea there would be, as part of the code review, to look for anything like that may lead to a bot becoming completely unresponsive. So you're looking for graceful error trapping. There's cases, we saw this kind of coincidentally yesterday with the demonstration that Tim was doing, where in some cases you may have to put in sort of a wait condition to make sure that an element on a form is available, but you want to make sure, of course, that that's not kind of going on forever. So we've not seen that in production, but not to say that it wouldn't happen. But and again, as Brian was speaking to, in having each customer set up within their own environment. So what that means is that each agency at least is isolated onto their own virtual server. So if, God forbid something did happen, at least they're not bringing down everyone at agriculture, they're only taking down their own host.
No, appreciate that. Definitely appreciate that. Makes total sense. Latrice, this might be a question for you specifically. How are you guys marketing your multi-tenant environment? How are you guys marketing RPA within USDA to help drive some interest in what you guys are doing?
So one thing that we did do to market the RPA program was back in May, I believe it was, where we did a 3-day, 1-hour webinar series about the RPA program, where we opened it up to all of the department to sit in on a 1-hour session. We call it a lunch and learn, where we talked about how we do the pipeline process, so the RPA small development process, the environment, and also we had invited a handful of people to tell their success stories and see bots that could be that were enterprise bots and also bots that can possibly be enterprised. We also have a system here called Gov Delivery where we sent out notifications via that, where we had a flyer that we sent out to customers so they can gauge interest into RPA. We also have our business relationship management team that reaches out to the customers, and when they discuss our other services, they discuss RPA with the customers as well. And then we also have a council set up as well, where we meet with the mission areas to discuss RPA. And we're also looking to create a TRB as well, where we'll be talking to people that are boots on the ground, doing RPA development to gear up more interest than that. And that is also part of our contract as well, where once things are opening up again, we'll be doing Build-A-Bot sessions with our customers as well on the ground in labs.
That's awesome. So I think we've answered a lot of the questions that have come into the chat. So we appreciate everything that you guys have kind of put forth. So before we're done here, I just want to kind of, I know we talked about it before this conversation started, but what is you guys' plan for the next year and then kind of the next 5 years with RPA? Where do you see this kind of taking you guys as an agency?
So our goal for the next 5 years as an agency is the hopes that with next year having 200 bots into production, our 5-year goal is to have 1,000 bots within production, working with the mission areas throughout the department and other agencies. That is our goal. And then also we have our training goals too as well, to have 60 people trained in RPA development this year. And then each year moving forward, an additional 60 people trained in RPA development, so we can begin taking on that work ourselves in-house to be able to develop bots for our respective mission areas.
Awesome. And my last question for you, do you see RPA as a stepping stone for maybe some more advanced technologies, maybe incorporating some intelligent automation into your workflow or different things like that?
So we do, and I'll touch briefly on this because we've actually been meeting with other vendors to learn more about their AI technology and see how it can assist us when it comes to RPA, and also giving us use cases that we can possibly think of using their technology with their RPA development.
No, that's awesome. So, I mean, with that, Jim, I'll kind of turn it back over to you. Thank you guys all for your presentation. This was super, super helpful to our community. Appreciate everything you've given, but back to you, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Great session, and thank you to our participants for submitting your questions. There were a lot of them, and I'm proud that we were able to get to so many. Thank you to USDA and our speakers today for volunteering to share their impressive accomplishments and all their knowledge with us. So if you like today's session, you're in luck. We'll learn about NASA's RPA program on Thursday, July 30th. So that discussion will provide insight into NASA's DevSecOps implementation and how RPA will take advantage of that capability. So again, just thank you to USDA for being here today, and thank you for participating in today's event. I hope that we will see you again in the future for these cross-COP collaborations between DevSecOps and the RPA communities of practice. Brian, any word from you before we sign off?
No, thank you all again for
appreciate-
joining.
Oh.
We're really glad to
Brian.
see all of the terrific involvement, energetic involvement, and Jim, otherwise, yeah, just again, thanks again to the folks from USDA for sharing. And I'm looking forward to NASA and GSA sharing. So, and if anyone else has examples elsewhere in government that you think would be great for this joint community discussion, feel free to just email Jim and I. My email is brian.fox@gsa.gov. Again, that's brian.fox@gsa.gov. So thank you all. Sure appreciate it.